Just a second. Just a second. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Damai, Pedig Vav, Halacha Hey, and Halacha Vav. Today we're going to be learning Daf Samach Aleph. We left off on Daf Samach Amid Beis, 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid by the 2 dots, Shnaim Shabatzru Karmeim. So now we're going to begin referring back to the second part, to the Seifa of Halacha Hey. Right? I know we quoted this din many times and we have yet to explain it, that the words of the Mishnah is Shnayim Shabatzru Karmeim L'toich Gas Echos. So 2 people, each one owning a different vineyard, right? They harvest the grapes, but they make a partnership in which both of the parties put their grapes into one vat. And from these 2 partners, says the Mishnah, Echad Ma'aser, one person is what we call a Neman, one person is trustworthy and tithing it all. The Echad She'ena Ma'aser. Right, and we keep on repeating the big klal that there is this general prohibition of either selling or transferring produce. That's tevel, or produce that's demai. I know by demai we have the exception of a seaplane that we're going to get to in a moment. But no, the problem is that one of these 2 partners is not ma'aser. So the Mishnah says that ha ma'aser, not only, of course, will be ma'aser eshaloi, right? He's going to get half of the wine. Also, of course, from his half, he's going to separate all of the trumas u'maisvus. But in addition, now here are the words that have to be explained. V'chelkoi b'chol mokem shehu. And he will also have to tithe his part, no matter who is now in possession of it. This has to be clarified. So let's go 2 steps. Step number 1 is that throughout Shas, we have a machlokes. That's really, it begins with a machlokes tanoim, whether yesh breida or ein breida. Breida means retroactive clarification. In our sugya, breida would mean that when 2 partners now divide their partnership, if you were to subscribe to the principle of breida, breida would mean that when Reuven gets his half, that retroactively clarifies that this always was his half. He's not making an exchange, getting some of Shimon's because he's giving for his to Shimon. No, he's getting what was always his. The other party is getting what was always his. If you were to subscribe to Yesh Bereda, there would be absolutely no issue in our Mishnah, even though one is Ma'asir, one is not Ma'asir. So what? I know that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelozeh, and I know that if I know there's another Jew that's not Ma'asir, I have a responsibility to inspire him to be Ma'asir, but I don't have to separate. I'm not doing anything wrong. In other words, I have mine, I did mine, and now let me inspire, let me go do Mifsaim. Here, our whole sugya is predicated on our Mishnah accepting Ein Bereda. Ein Bereda means that when Reuven and Shimon, when Reuven gets at the end half of the wine, we don't say that what he got was always his. So there is some sort of exchange that's happening by him getting some of Shimon's, by Shimon getting some of Reuven's. Again, let's say Reuven is the Ma'asir, Shimon is the She'ena Ma'asir. And now let me add 2 ways of understanding better the character, Pashut, of a partner ownership prior to dividing. One way of understanding a partner, a ownership in partnership is that each partner, guys, held up, each partner owns throughout their partnership an unidentifiable half of the property. So Reuven only owned half throughout. Shimon only owned half, but it's unidentifiable. When they decide, if they decide to divide their partnership, when you don't subscribe to Bereda, nothing goes retroactive. So there are really 3 options of what happened. Either punt pashgacha pratis, the half that was never yet identified, that always belonged to Reuven, went fully to Reuven. The other half somehow all went to Shimon. That could be. It's small. Could be punkt verkehrt. Could be that all of what belonged to Shimon went to Reuven. All of what belonged to Reuven went to Shimon. Oh, small percent. 1 in a million. 1 in a billion. Could be. Or some of Reuven's half went to him. Some of it went to Shimon. Some of Shimon's half went to Shimon, and some of Shimon's half went to Reuven. That's the probability of what happened over here. That is one way of understanding, again, that since a partnership means that throughout each one only owned half, we just don't know which half. It was an unidentifiable half. So when they divide it, now we don't know exactly who, what, when, and where. Okay? There's another way of understanding a partnership prior to the division. That every partner owns half of every granule here, let's say, of wheat. Every partner always owned half of every drop of wine. They always owned half of each one. So now when you divide a partnership, again, only if you were to say ein bereida, everyone for sure is getting half of theirs and half of the others. Reuven is getting half of his, half of Shimon's. Shimon is getting half of Shimon's, half of Reuven's. And their agreement of dividing the partnership is basically they're making a chalipin, they're making an exchange. Reuven tells Shimon, listen, I know I have half of yours, you have half of mine, you gift me yours, I'll in exchange gift you mine, and Shalom al Yisrael. Based on these two ways of understanding the type of ownership, the character of the ownership of partners, accordingly, we're going to have two different understandings in our Mishnah. Machlekes between Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Yoina, two Amoraim. Rabbi Lazar will subscribe to the first way we explained. Again, that when they are partners, each one owns an unidentifiable half, but they only own half. Rabbi Yoina will understand that each partner owns half of every granule. Ba'ofen kized, that when you make a division, bevadai, each one is getting half of theirs and half of the others, and accordingly we'll have two interpretations of what the Mishnah means when it says v'chelka b'chol makom shu. What will be beautiful of our Gemara from here until the end of Daf Samach Aleph, in the bottom until Halacha Vav, is that the Mishnah is going to be following the opinion of ein bereida. The next halacha, amazing, will begin speaking more about what partners need to do, right, when they jointly own produce, when they divide their partnerships. The Mishnah is going to right away say halachas that are predicated on the option of yesh bereida, which is quite amazing. Like for Rabbeinu HaKadosh in the same Masech, the one Mishnah right after the other, Stam Mishnayos, to go back and forth is a huge chiddush. And I know that we already spoke out yesterday, and actually this is the way we paskin, that when it comes to a Surei Doiraisa, we say ein bereida. When it comes to a Surei Derabanan like Eruvin, or mitzvahs Derabanan like Eruvin, we say yesh bereida. Our understanding of the Gemara here in Yerushalmi, to be able to chap, why is it that we're going from one Mishnah, the one that we're learning now, the beginning of today's share, right, on Halacha Hey, the seif of Halacha Hey will be ein bereida. And Halacha Vav is going to be predicated on the rule of yesh bereida. Listen to these words, guys, will be the following. When partners own items that are connected to the ground, mechubar, and they divide their partnership when it's mechubar, when things are attached to the ground, for some reason we say yesh bereida. There is retroactive clarification. And therefore, again, when one is ma'ased, one is not ma'ased, there'll be absolutely no issue with the violation of the general prohibition of you can't sell tevel, you can't exchange tevel, you can't transfer tevel, and the same goes with the mai, with one exception of the seaplane that we'll explain when we learn the Gemara. We're going to review it. Yesh bereida, amachai, there'll never be an issue, because if you have two partners, even if one is ma'ased and one is not ma'ased, if you say yesh bereida, even if you're going to go to the second way that we said in Rabbi Yoina, that every partner always owns half of every piece. Every drop is divided in half. And when you divide it, so what? When you divide it retroactively, everything that Reuven will take possession of was always his. Everything that Shimon takes possession of was always Shimon's. And Shalom al Yisrael, and everything is perfect. However, even in the case of Halacha Vav, where the items in discussion, the partnership is on something that's attached, not detached. Detached is halacha hey. Detached is what we're beginning today's daf with. When it's attached, we say Bereida, even there, if they are partners in two or more varieties, two or more species, and when they make the division, let's say they own two fields, one wheat, one barley. So if they are going to say half of the wheat is mine, half of the wheat is yours, half of the barley is mine, half of the barley is yours. In the case where it's mechubar, Bereida, there's no issue. But if one partner tells the other, I know that we are partners in both fields, but you know what? I'm going to keep all the wheat, you're going to keep all the barley. In that case, even when you generally subscribe to the principle of Bereida, the fact that you're making such a division, that I owned half of the wheat field, I'm going to get none of it. I'm going to get only the barley. There, for sure, even if you say Yesh Bereida, we understand the division of the partnership, of there being some sort of chalip in exchange. And now, again, we'll trigger the issue if one is ma'aser, one is not ma'aser. And as we'll speak out more details, exactly how that problem will play out in all of our scenarios of today's daf. And now we are ready to begin. Daf Samach Amid Beis. 3 lines before the bottom of the Amid. The Gemara begins by quoting the words of the Mishnah, Shnayim Shabatzru Karmeyim Vechulei. And now we have to pashut understand the meaning of the words Bechelkoi Bechol Makom Shehu. What does that mean? So Amar Abelaz. So aside of we already explaining in our introduction that the only reason why there's a problem is only because this Mishnah, Halacha Hey, is going to be siding with the opinion, aligning with the opinion of Ein Bereida, and therefore, when they divide a partnership, let's go, I'm going to say right away by heart, what we are saying, Chevra, is, according to Rabbi Elazar, that every partner throughout only owned half, but each one's half is unidentifiable. You don't know which half. But only half, not half of every piece. Stam half, 50% mine, 50% yours. Now let's think it through. If you say Ein Bereida, so again, if Reuven got what was really always his, it's fantastic. Shimon got what was always his, fantastic. Reuven is ma'aser, Shimon is not ma'aser. What is the problem? The problem is that maybe, now I'm saying a maybe that's a very small percent, that all of Shimon's half went to Reuven, all of Reuven's half went to Shimon, all of it. Now we got a problem, because if Shimon's half went to Reuven, if Reuven's half went to Shimon, so there is an exchange. There is an exchange. Another detail, even when a person is not ma'aser, like when I buy produce from the Amaretz who's not ma'aser, all I'll need to do is to separate the demai separations.
Oh, I'm sorry. If they're not identifiable, how do you know which went to whom?
We don't. No. The partners just agree. They say it doesn't matter, because all the partners care about Kevan is the value. So, if there's a total of 10 pounds of wheat, like who cares what was really mine before? Other than the halachic issue, which is huge, let me just finish speaking out. I don't care. I'm getting 5 pounds, you're getting 5 pounds. But since it could be that the 5 pounds that I'm getting, Reuven, was never mine, it was always yours. You're getting mine. Now listen to this. We learned in the second chapter that even though normally the rule is that a person prior to selling, prior to transferring, prior to giving tevel or demai, the giver, the seller, is chayiv to make all of the separations. There was an exception. The exception is the sitoin, the wholesaler. We had 2 reasons. One reason is there's so little profit by the wholesaler, we don't put the onus on it. So if a sitoin is giving up his demai, the sitoin doesn't have to separate anything. It's on the lekeach, it's on the buyer or on the retailer to make the separations. But there we had a machlokes that I've made in the Chachamim, which was Gaval. We got this in the second chapter. And I've made holds that the heter, that a sitoin doesn't have to be concerned by him transferring the mai, is only if he's actually a wholesaler. A balabas, even if the balabas this one time is selling or transferring or exchanging a very large amount, an amount that is normally transferred or sold only by a wholesaler, doesn't matter. It's only for the sitoin. The Chachamim say it doesn't matter what you do for a profession. Remember that? Mida daka, mida gasa. Those were the words we had before. And the Mishnah said how much that is. If the quantity is the quantity of mida gasa, then the heter that a sitoin doesn't have to be concerned with transferring the mai exists nonetheless. So therefore, even if we hold Ein Bereda, if we're going to subscribe to the sheet of the Chachamim, still there is no issue. Because the presumption of the Gemara now in our Mishnah and Halacha Hey is that these two people, Shabatzru Kamem Lagas Achaz, the quantities of wine is Midah Gasa. And if it would be Midah Gasa, Viter doesn't matter. All Reuven would have to do is the half that he got, he'll be Ma'asadik. Like every Jew, you have to be Ma'asa your probes. There might have been an exchange with a Jew that's an Ama'aretz, which is Shimon. So what? Doesn't matter. But now, says Lamed treat it inside, that Amar Abu Lazar, that our Mishnah, not only is it assuming Ein Bereda, but also it limits the heter of the Sitoin like Rav Meir does, that Rav Meir Amar Leitiro Limker Demai, Elo Lesitoin Bulvat. Here we go. Now, let's read the Pnei Moshe. Let's read the Pnei Moshe. He's going to speak it out Gaval. Right, 7 lines from the bottom. That Amar Abu Lazar, that our Mishnah is explained that Rav Meir, Hamas Nisan, the EU, the Amar Liel, Rav Meir said before in Pedig Beis, and that's based on the Teseftu, the Garish of the Pedig Gimel, also that Leitiro Limker Demai Elo Lesiton. Siton means Hamoicher, Hu Hamoicher Haber Biyach. Aval Habalabas. If you have a person who's not a professional wholesaler, whether it's a balabas, by the way, it's not only if it's a balabas, whether it's a balabas, whether it's a retailer, that Punkt now made a big sale. Benkach or Benkach Tzorech La'asel, Kloimet. Ben Shomoich B'mida Dak. Even if he's Moide B'mida Gas. No, the heter is only for the sitter. The Chachamim Moimrim, no, Echad Sitter, Echad Balabai, is Mutter Limkar, V'L'Shlech L'Chavede B'Matana, as long as it is B'mida Gasa, Kid Datanin Ansha. Now, Pnei Moshe words it over here. That it must follow meaning the time of the Masnisan Mishum. Here are the words. Two people divided a partnership. Again, this is the words. Each one prior to the division owned only half. Elamah, their half was, we don't know which half is which ones. It's unidentifiable. So what's happening for sure is a chalipin. I wanted to correct myself, but not for sure. There's again 1 out of a billion that Reuven will get exactly what was always his, but that's too little of a chance. And therefore, second to last line in the Pnei Moshe, each one is selling their half in order to get the other person's half, and the amount is a lot. You have a midah gasa, doesn't matter, because these people they're not wholesalers. Well, if he's faras Rav Meir, the balabai is leitiro limkar esadamai, achia aser, and therefore Omar Khan. What do you need to do? Now we're reading the Pnei Moshe, the words we'll have in the Gemara. So what does it mean in the Mishnah of Echalka B'chol Makim Shu? Guys, Reuven got tevel, right? On his chelik, you have to be ma'ased everything. Everything means everything. Truma, Meiser Rishon, Trumas Meiser, Meiser Sheni, whatever. Now, what about on the other half? Now, the other half he doesn't have. I know he doesn't have it. But what are we afraid? We are afraid that his other half, all of Reuven's half, is now in the possession of Shimon. Shimon is not Ma'aser. Shimon is not Ma'aser doesn't mean Shimon won't take off Truma Gedoyla. We learned everyone took off Truma Gedoyla. Who knows what might end up happening? That the Amaretz won't take off, let's say, the Trumas Meiser. So in addition to what Reuven takes from his half, all of the tithes, he has to take from his half the Trumas Meiser for the other half. In other words, the separation from the Mai, he also has to do 50% everything, and the other 50% he takes off the Mai. Let's read the words inside the Pnei Moshe, then we'll go on the Gemara. Lefikach Amrukan, the last line of the Pnei Moshe, that Sheya'aser Demai al Chelik Chavedoi Shal Zeh She'ena Ma'aser Kid Messiah Va'azol. And now let's read the words inside. So now, based on Rabbi Lazar's understanding, not only Ein Bereda is a given, the Gemara doesn't even have to mention it, but compounded that our Mishnah must follow Rabbi Meir, that who parsalah, Rabbi Lazar explains the Mishnah, Hama'aser Ma'aser Eshaloi Vadai. Of course, it's Tevel. And when the Mishnah says the words V'chelkoi B'chol Makim Shuhu, end of quote, what does that mean? The problem is, again, Taka, the other guy is not Ma'aser, but at the end of the day, the other guy will take off Truma Gedoyla from what he has. So what is lacking? It's lacking the demai separations. And that's like what he has to do. Why does he have to do it? Because it could be it was his. And for that, you have to take off demai. Okay. Now we got a problem with that. Problem with that is that why are we talking about demai? Why are we talking about demai? These two people, they made wine. It's tevel gomur. So asks Rabbi Yoina, aside of the fact that Rabbi Yoina understands the ownership of partnership differently, but before that, he rejects Rabbi Lazar on another principle. The moment you're telling me that the way you explained, that each one only owned half, and it could be each one got their half, but it could be pump, they gave each other the other halves. Okay, let's go with that. So if I to Uven, my half went to Shimon, how can I give Shimon tevel? I don't care if Shimon is going to, on his own, when he grows produce, take off Truma Gedolah. But if I grew tevel, I'm not allowed to sell. I'm not allowed to transfer. Here it's a chalifin. Doesn't matter. I'm not allowed to give it unless I'm going to take off all the Trumas Umaisis. So based on your understanding that each one only owned half, we just don't know where it is. So could be there was a real chalifin. I know that Shimon, if I, Reuven, would do nothing, he'll take off Truma Gedolah. I get that. But I'm not allowed to do chalipin with tevel. So Rabbi Yoina Boyam, moicher vadai. If a person is selling vadai, vadai means tevel. If I sell vadai, even though I know that the buyer, if the buyer will find out that I did nothing, even though he's an Amma Aretz, something he'll do. He'll separate Truma Gedolah. I'm not allowed to sell, and so therefore, I'm going to sell tevel to an Amma Aretz, and I'm going to tell myself, you know what? I'm only going to separate Trumas Meiser. I'm not allowed to do that. Moicher vadai masaken demai doesn't work that way. That's the problem. That's a gewaldige kash. Look inside the Pnei Moshe, 10 lines from the top. Rabbi Yoina Boya, al hoder Rabbi Lazar, the ledidach, the moik masla kirav meir. Mitrama kemoichen have, it's like a moicher. Why is it a moicher? We said because could be all of Shimon's chelik went to Reuven and all of Reuven's chelik went to Shimon. Im kein kashya. Moicher vadim isaken demai bit me the first line under the Gemara on the Pnei Moshe that he can shechaveru ze yodeyahu she'eno ma'aser peroisa the chelkei tevel vadayu. In other words, I get it. And Amaretz takes off something here. They know, everyone knows it's tevel gomer. Ve'im kemoicher lei machashnet lei lezeh ma'aser. If we're viewing Reuven as if he sold in exchange tevel im kein amai komarta the eno ma'aser chelik haveri kim demai. Beautiful. Right? Gavaldik. It's really Gavaldik Akash. It's hard to understand the answer, but Rabbi Yoina will give another explanation in the Mishnah based on something else that's unspoken. And that is that he Bechlal argues with Rabbi Lazar's understanding of the character of the partnership prior to dividing it. Rabbi Yoina understands that in every piece, guys, everyone owns half. What changes? Everything changes. Let me tell you what changes. According to Rabbi Lazar's understanding, Reuven and Shimon divide partnership. It could mamish be that Reuven got the whole chelik of Shimon, Shimon got the whole chelik of Reuven. That's a possibility. I know it's very small, but it's possible. If you were to say, which is what Rabbi Yoina understands, that each partner owns half of every piece, when they make a division, and ein bereda, this is only if ein bereda, each one is getting half of his and half of the others. For sure. There's no chance that I'm getting all of the others. And therefore, as we'll read it inside, Rabbi Yoina will understand that the Mishnah's demand on the Ma'aser, according to Rabbi Lazar, the demand on the Ma'aser was really to tithe all of it, Elama, 50%, which is the one that he kept, Tevel, all of the Maises, Vadai, and for the other 50%, the tithings of the Mai. But Reuven is separating on everything. Rabbi Yoina will explain the Mishnah in a way where Reuven, the Ma'aser, will only end up separating Trumas and Maises on 75%. Not on 100%. I know that Rabbi Lazar is not saying 100% all of the Maises. I know that. Half Vadai, half the Mai, but he has to deal with all of it. According to Rabbi Yoina Reuven will never have to deal with all of it. Because half of what Reuven got was always his. Half of what Shimon got was always Shimon's. On the half, even though Ein Bereira, on the half that Shimon got, that was always Shimon's, Reuven doesn't have any achrayas. The achrayas will only be on the half that Shimon got. Now, on what Reuven has now, again, it's tevel. Even though half was always his and half was always Shimon's, on his half, he has to separate everything. His concern with Chelik Chaveiroi is only on 50% of Chelik Chaveiroi. Now let's read it inside. We're not done with the Tevel and the...
What about his part? Meaning half of what he has is actually not his, it's the other guy's. But he's separating Maestros on that guy's stuff.
Well, they made an exchange. Now he has it. In other words, once they made the division, even though you say Ein Bereira, but Nikano Lahaba, whatever Reuven has belongs to Reuven. I have Tevel. You can't. I know you can't. So let's read it inside. Hold on. So says Rabbi Yoina. Okay, so answers the Gemara. Elam. Hey, Rabbi Yoina answers that I'm going to follow Rabbi Yochanan. And Rabbi Yochanan says that we don't have to get into Rav Meir and the Chachamim. It's not relevant. It doesn't have to only follow Rabbi Meir. Our Mishnah follows Divrei HaKoli. And the Chachamim hold, by the way, this is very important, the Chachamim hold that if a person is selling, transferring, exchanging, whatever that is, a large amount, they are exempt of the Mai. Nevertheless, there's an issue here. And how are you to explain it? How Ma'aser, we're calling him Reuven, Ma'aser Esholoi Vadai. And why is that, Danny? Because I don't care if half of what Reuven has now was not his. Doesn't matter. Reuven knows that all of what he has now, half of the wine is Tevel. If I own Tevel, there's nothing I can do with it other than first tithing it. Now, the Chelkoi, the Chol Makim Shuhu, the Mai, that I'll explain in a moment. In other words, the other half in his possession is whose, Danny? The other half in his possession is Shimon's. Shimon is an Ama'aretz. Listen, Shimon is an Ama'aretz. Shimon, the Ama'aretz, if I have a produce from an Ama'aretz, that's the one. I'm not selling it to him. I have his. Oh, Danny, I'll go back. I have to separate for 50, for let's say there were 10 liters of wine. I'm getting 5 liters. I have to separate all of the maestros for 5 liters. What are those 5? 2.5 that's mine, 2.5 that's Shimon's. I'm not selling anything before I'm selling. But I own 5 liters of wine. For that, I have to separate Trumas and Maestros. In addition, half of what I have now belongs to Shimon. For that, I have to separate the mine. Gavaldik. The Shimon has half of mine, and he has half of his. The half that he has of mine, I fully separated everything. On the half that Shimon has, that always belongs to him, and none of my business. Let him do. Let him do his obligations, and if he doesn't do his obligations, I know I have to do mitzvah. I have to inspire him, but I'm not chayv to separate for him. That's how it works. Let's read it
problem, though, right? If this
what's the problem?
No, I get logistically how it works, but I'm just saying if you think about the Amaretz, he has in front of him, whatever it is, the 5 liters, right? So he's gonna go and take off Truma Gedela, which is what we say that he will always do, right? But is this guy gonna know I'm taking off Truma Gedela for half of this 5 liters, which is mine, and then another half, which is actually by the other guy. It's an Amaretz.
That's a great question. I got it. In other words, half of his Truma Gedela, he's going to just take off Truma Gedela. You know, you're going to have Truma Gedela taken off twice.
Well, he'll probably take it off for his whole amount, but he's not going to intend for it to go to the part that's in the other guy's possession.
No. So maybe the Reuven has to tell Shimon that I already resolved half of your issue. Because half of it is mine. And I separated everything.
But the half that he's holding that we're saying is only demai has to have Truma Gedola first taken off by the Amaretz.
The Amaretz will only have, let's say he got 5 liters. Let's say 2% of 5 liters. I don't know the grams over here. The Shimon is going to only have to separate 2% on 2.5 liters.
No, unless you're saying that.
No. I take it back. No. I got it, Danny. Shimon is taking off 2% of 5 liters, but those 2%, they're going for that what Shimon has in his home and for what Shimon has in Reuven's home. That's how it works.
Does Shimon know that?
Does he have to know it?
I don't know.
He's taking off for what's his. I don't know. In other words, he's saying it's Gavaldik. He's saying they're not making an exchange. They're not selling to each other. Each one has half of his and half of the others. Okay. So that will be the big difference. According to Rabbi Lazar, the Pshat in the Mishnah is Reuven takes off all of the maasros for what he has. For the 50%, that's Biyat Shimon. He has to separate on all of his 50%, all of the demai separations. According to Rabbi Yoina, there is no chalip and there's no exchange. We don't have to go into the din of a sitoin. We don't have to go. We don't have to limit it to Rav Meir. We're simply saying that Reuven owns half is in his hand, half is biyat chaveroi, for which he takes off all the trumas u'maises. For the half that he owns, that's biyat Shimon. Very good.
Why not just agree that this is mine and this is yours and move on?
Because once you make an exchange, that's the problem, Kevan. If you say ein bereira, I'm not allowed to transfer or exchange or gift. That's the issue. Right. Okay, beautiful. Wow. Okay. So that's that. And now let's move on to the Samach Aleph Amud Beis. And here again, the amazing part of our sugya that's almost unspoken is that we just came off the Sefer of Halacha Hey, and all of it, whether you follow Rabbi Yoina, whether you follow Rabbi Lazar, it's all based on Ein Bereira. The Mishnah is going to begin as I give in Bereira. And what's the case of the Mishnah? So let's speak about, the Mishnah gives 3 categories of people that share rights with someone else. Number one example. Shnayim shekiblu es asada ba'arisus. So until now we were speaking about a mekabel. I know, first of all, why did Rabbeinu HaKadosh go from the words mekabel to arisus? I don't know. But now it's the same thing, a sharecropper. Forget about the chelik of the owner. We're not even looking about the chelik of the owner. We're saying that Reuven and Shimon together, they were mekablim, they were an aris by Chaim Yankel's field. And after everything was said and done, right, in other words, they own, let's say it was lemechza. Half of what grows will belong to the sharecroppers, but it's 2 sharecroppers. So each one of Reuven and Shimon, they own half of the chelik of the sharecroppers. Another example will be Yerusha. So the father passed away, and the father in this case will always be an Amaretz, and his children, as we'll see in a moment, one of them will be a Chaver, one will be an Amaretz. In other words, one with Ma'aser ve'echad she'einu Ma'aser, or bona fide partners. Okay, and now they want to make a division. Here again, we have this general isur of selling, transferring, gifting, tevel or demai. And here again, one is ma'aser, one is not ma'aser. That must be the case. So yachol hu loimer loi, one is allowed to tell to the other, toilat achitim shebamakim ploini, ba'ani chitim shebamakim ploini, or ata yayin shebamakim ploini, va'ani yayin shebamakim ploini. And let's read inside. Let's read the Marafulda. Look inside the top Marafulda. We'll see that yayin does not mean wine, because we said in the introduction it's yesh bereira only because it's mechubar. Wine is not mechubar. Look inside the Marafulda. Toil ato hache kiv and sheneshtatfu umagia lachol echad chelek. Here's the word b'mechubar. That's the answer. Harei ze shaloi v'loy nesarvu achar kach. Ulefika kol echad ma'aser shaloi v'diyoi. In other words, as long as they're not making a new chalukah of, I know that we have chitim and so'idim, I'll take all the chitim, you'll take all of the so'idim, next case in the Mishnah. As long as that's not happening, as long as in each species or in each of the varieties, everyone is simply saying at a point, guys, half is mine, half is yours. I'm taking the one to the right of the field, you're taking to the left of the field. Since it's mechubar breida. Breida means that whatever I'll end up taking, I don't care the two ways we learned a partnership, no matter which way. Now that we're making a division, if it's lemafreya, if it's retroactive, so the Reuven is getting all but always belong to him. Same thing with Shimon. And when you make a chalukah, now, therefore, I just want to say that wine means the grapes in the vineyard from which you'll get the wine. It must mean that over here. What you cannot say is toilat chitam anisa item. So let's say they have both a vineyard and they have a olive field, right? So here again, you can't say all of the grapes are mine, all of the olives are yours. That is something that you can't do. In all of these cases, just to make it clear, wine means grapes, shemen means olives. It doesn't mean oil. It means olives. That's the key of our Mishnah, that when they're making a chalukah while it's still mechubar karka, we will say bereid. Now continues the Mishnah. Chaver ba'amoretz sheyarshu aviyam amoretz. Okay, I want to say more than that. That in the case of the Reisha, I don't even have to speak about a case where one is a chaver, one is an amoretz. It's not about that. It's not about that. There can be two chaverim. There can be two chaverim. I'm not allowed to transfer tevel. I can't make chalipin with tevel. Period. Even if everyone is a chaver. Now let's go. Chaver ba'amoretz. Sheyarshu aviyam amoretz. Okay. In other words, the produce has the status of the mai. Yochel hu loimer loi. This is the chaver telling the amoretz. Toil atachitim shemamakim ploini. Va'ani chitim shemamakim ploini. The same thing. Ati yayim amakim ploini. And then va'ani yayim amakim ploini. Because since they're making a chalukah when it's mechubar, there's no issue. Aside of me, I'm not allowed to transfer tevel. I have no issue with the mai. I have no issue with anything. Avoloi here also. Avoloi yoimeloi toil atachitim ani soidim. Toil ato salach vani etel asayovesh. Upa. Now we introduce a whole new thing. And now let's go to the chaver and amaaretz in the context of tuma and tarim. So let me say like this: lach is produce that is muchshar lekabel tuma. There's another din that I'm not, like we learned already before in this Pedic. If there is produce that's muchshar lekabel tuma, I have to be concerned selling it to an amaaretz, because since the amaaretz is becheskas tamei, he's going to take hold of this produce. He'll right away make a tamei. It's currently tevel. When he'll make the separation of truma gedola, it will right away become truma temeya. Okay. So the amaaretz is prohibited to transfer to the amaaretz muchshar. The Mishnah is chiddush over here. That's a big thing. That lach and yavesh are considered two different varieties. That's the chiddush. In other words, we already established when something is connected, then we say bereida. I'm struggling. I'm thinking if something is connected, there's no issue of lach. It must be that it's not mechuber. So maybe they began their partnership while it was mechuber. Maybe that's the pshat. I have to look up on that, and I'll speak about this tomorrow, because everyone speaks about this mechuber thing. Everyone. The chiddush of the sefer of the Mishnah is that lach and yavesh are considered two species or two varieties, and that's the whole part of the Mishnah. Is that even if you accept the principle of bereida, you never say it's two varieties. Lach and yavesh are two varieties, so that in itself will disallow you to make that type of exchange. Okay. Look inside the Rash Aurelio. It's in middle of the right. It's in Divrei Hamaschel Toil Atachitim Shemakim Ploini. He's the one that speaks out explicitly. Hold on. The last Mishnah ain't Bereda. This Mishnah Bereda. Then came Kasheresh L'Seifa. The neighbor Nami ain't Bereda. If you're going to say ain't Bereda, even Chitim Umoicher Tevelu. The Yeshweimar the Le'el Batzru HaKoil Legas Achas V'Nis Arif HaKoil L'Makim Achet. Okay, so let's go. That's much easier for me to follow the Rashidil, not the Namara folder. He says the difference between our Mishnah and the previous Mishnah is that in the previous Mishnah, it was physically all mixed together. When something is all mixed together, ain't Bereda. Here, it was never mixed together. Okay, let's go with that. That answers that. Then you can say that the word yayin means wine, and that for sure explains lach and yavish. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's mechuber or not. The lach was never mixed with the yavish, and they're both wheat. So kamash on the Mishnah that lach and yavish is considered two varieties, two species. Okay, we have another few minutes. Guys, we're opening up a huge sugya of Bereda, and let's begin. Let's begin with the begin. Now, guys, we keep on learning the din of Surya. Surya, as we had also in the Babli, is a big territory, which includes probably most of modern day Syria. It was conquered by David HaMelech. It for sure does not have the same status of Eretz Yisrael because the Chachamim called that Kibush Yachid. If you remember, we had a Machlekes Rashi Tosfos. What's the meaning of Kibush Yachid? Number one, either David HaMelech conquered Syria prior to conquering the lands of the seven nations. Since he did not yet finish conquering all of Eretz Yisrael, biblical Eretz Yisrael, those other conquests are considered kibush yachid. Or since he did not consult the Urim V'Tumim and the Sanhedrin, it was not considered mamish on behalf of the whole Jewish people. Whichever way you learn, Surya biblically is not considered Eretz Yisrael concerning Trumas U'Maisros. Nevertheless, midrabanan, produce that grows there has to be tithes. But we learned a whole chapter. The Machlekes, Rav Meir, Rav Tarfin against Rav Shimon and Rav Yehuda. Yesh king in la'akum, Beretz Yisrael lafkia, ain't king in la'akum. L'kula alma in Syria, if a goy owns land, everything that grows there never has to be tithed, not even midrabanan. Of course, again, the goy is never going to tithe. In Syria, everyone holds yesh kinyan l'nachri l'hafkiyam and amaisis. So now you got that. Now let's begin. We learned in a Brais. You have a Yisrael and a Goy that they both jointly own a field in Syria, which means that 50% of the produce that belongs to a Goy never needs to be tithed. So what do we say the whole time? Hareyu ketevel, and I know the word is mu'usar, but let's follow the emendation of the Gra, which simply makes sense, because if yesh kinyan l'nachri in Syria, according to everyone, lahafkim and amaisres, so what grows is like it grew in LA. It's chulin. Let's use the words chulin. Hareo ketebel and chulin that are me'oirav and zebozeh. Okay, and what does that mean? What does that mean? Look inside the Marafut. I know it's getting late. This is so geshmak. At the beginning of the Gemara, Tani Yisrael the Goy, Perek HaSholeach Gittin Mem Zayin, Maisela, the Tani Surya. But the Shas over there in Bavli says it's Surya. The might of Surya. The what? The Maisel does only the Rabban. And because of it, Kibush Yachid, Shekibush David, you call Yisrael, Yisrael, Loishmei Kibush, and therefore the Kula Alma V'Yesham Kiyan L'Nach L'Afkiyam Edei Meiser. So what do we do now? Let's go back to the Marafuda. Hareo Ketevu Chol Mazem. Right? So here, Kevu and here in Meiser, Ritzayin Oleimer. Guys, a few lines before the end of the Marafuda. Ke'ilu Kfar Mu'usar Half. They have chulam misukanim. The shalnachri potter. Ella shehein me'oirav. Now they are mixed. Now we're going to go again back to ve'ein bereda. So you have to know that. If you were to say bereda, then whatever the goy keeps is chulin. Whatever the Jew kept was always his. And it's rabbinically chayv to be tevel, rabbinic tevel. If you say ein bereda, so everything you were to own, it's a mixture. Half of what I have is chul, and half of what I have is tevel. Divrei Rabbi. How does he word it? Okay, and we'll stop over here, and we're gonna continue. In other words, once you hold Beredo, everyone gets their half. Whatever the Jew gets has to be fully tithed. His half has to be tithed midrabanan, because what he has was always his. What always his was his land. What is his land does have to be tithed midrabanan.